Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. If your kids are younger than that, please use the YouTube Kids app.
Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. I hope you're having a scary weekend. If not, then fasten your safety belt because it's about to get pretty frightening. Before we get started, please allow me to announce that today's executive producer is Deborah A. Thank you for your support, Deborah. We couldn't do the show without you. If any of the rest of you would like to become a Scary Stories executive producer like Deborah, just join our very affordable Choose Your Own Price paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Club members have access to over 7 hours of secret, uncensored, scary Dogman stories, with a new story added each Sunday. Speaking of new stories, here's a new one that was so scary I had to turn all the lights on just to read it. And the name of this scary story is Chocolate Brown Colored Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, my story is very short, as it's more of just a report or a sighting than an actual story. It was later in the day, but it was still light enough out that I could make out exactly what I was seeing, and even what color its fur was. This happened way back in the late 1970s, long before it was fashionable to see a Dogman. In fact, I never heard of Dogman. I thought I was seeing a big brown werewolf or a mutated dog, or maybe a bear and dog hybrid, I don't know. It's funny, I always expected that someday I'd get to find out exactly what that was that I saw. I thought that it would be discovered by science and confirmed to be real. But even at the time that I'm writing this, nobody really seems to know what a Dogman even is. The area I was in on that day is just north of Mayfield, Michigan, and that is just south of the Edwards Nature Preserve. It's far from an urban setting, so it shouldn't really be all that much of a surprise if rare animals are spotted around there every now and again. I wonder if the thing I saw was one of the rarest animals of all. What happened was, as my eyes looked up and toward a patch of woods, at that very moment, a chocolate brown colored furry creature walked upright like a man between two trees. It was solid brown all over, but it was facing 3/4 away from me, so I could not see its chest or belly. As it walked, it turned its head to its left, showing me its profile. This creature's head had the long-nosed profile of a large canine. Of that I could not have been mistaken. I also got a good view of its tail as it walked mainly away from me and disappeared behind some trees. From where I was standing, it looked like the 3 or 4 steps it took would have been more like 20 or 25 steps to me. The creature didn't seem that large to me until I contemplated the distance between where I first saw him and where he went out of view. I would have to say, this is the 3 or 4 seconds in my life that I have probably thought about more than any other. It's stuck in my mind, and I can see the image of it any time I close my eyes. It's still fresh in my mind as though it just happened. In the later 80s and then 90s, when Dogman became something we would talk about, something people had heard of, I would tell people what I had seen back in the 70s. For a few years I really wondered if I had hallucinated the creature, but if so, it was kind of a boring hallucination, just appearing for a few seconds, then never again revealing itself to me for the rest of my life. And what a rude hallucination to not even look directly at me. All joking aside, I don't think it was a hallucination, and I think the fact that other people have reported seeing similar creatures in the years since then supports this notion. Maybe what I saw was real, and maybe what I saw was an actual Dogman. Now the next question to answer is, what exactly was the chocolate-colored Dogman? Don't go anywhere, we've got another Dogman story right after this.
You know what time is coming soon, don't you? The day of the wearing of the green skin. I'm inviting you to me St. Patrick's Day Dogman Party. The one and only Dr. Death St. Patrick's Day Scary Story Special. An extra long episode, and only us ghouls and ghosts and deceased individuals are invited. Oh, all right. You seem cool. You can come too. It all happens here on the Scary Stories NYC channel, Tuesday, March 17th. Feel free to arrive early. All my other guests are late.
Dogman is bad for your health. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I grew up in a neighborhood that my family still lives in, where Dogman isn't something you have to wonder about. In that part of the world, Dogman is just something that you have to deal with. This is a town nestled in the forest. Doesn't that sound like a nice way to put it? Nestled? Sounds all cozy. The problem is, when your town is nestled in the woods, that means it's plopped right on top of other kinds of creatures living other kinds of lives from the lives that we humans lead. It means that whatever predators happened to be there before you got there may still remain there after you've arrived, and they may become scavengers. If you've got coyotes in the area, don't leave your cat outside anymore. If you've got wolves or bear, don't leave your dogs or children outside. And if you've got Dogman, to be honest, if you've got Dogman, I just don't know what to tell you. I grew up expecting the Dogman to be there. I grew up paranoid, always looking over my shoulder. I grew up feeling as though I were always in danger and constantly under threat of siege. I grew up being called lazy and careless because I didn't jump at every shadow like my parents and siblings. I only jumped at every other shadow. It wasn't like it was just paranoia driving my family, because we did have the intermittent reinforcement of actual Dogman sightings and encounters. We would also hear stories from the neighbors about the troubles that they had been having, and the result was that we lived in a kind of fear that was probably more beneficial to the Dogmen than it was to us. We always felt bad. We always felt worried. We always wondered if we were in danger or if the danger was coming back soon. I doubt life in the wild for the Dogman could have been as harsh and cold as the lives that we had built up around ourselves in defense of the dog-headed, hairy beast man. Supposedly, my parents were both against tobacco and drinking before I was born. I never got to see any of that, because by my earliest memories, both Mom and Dad were chain-smoking, highly stressed-out individuals. So were all the other parents I met, though, so I just thought this was how life was. Dogman had been responsible, or at least blamed, for the disappearances of all the neighborhood pets. Dogman was blamed for the wounds that we all saw on the arm of one of our neighbors. Nobody'd seen the attack, but none of us doubted him when he said that the Dogman had inflicted it. We felt like prey in our own neighborhood. We felt like we were living on game land, and we were the game. I saw the Dogman one time, and only one time, but I had believed in his existence for years already by that point. I don't remember a time when I didn't accept the existence of the thing as fact. When I saw it, therefore, I was not surprised like many of you might be. There was none of that feeling that, finally I know for a fact that this is real. I already knew it had to be, because of the toll that the predator had taken on my family and all the families in the immediate vicinity. When I saw that Dogman, I had more of a feeling of Oh no, not me. And that was because we had a belief that most of the living creatures that come into contact with the Dogman probably don't live to tell the tale. Even though every Dogman story we had each heard was obviously told by someone who got away, we still persisted in this underlying nightmarish notion that if you saw the creature, you'd better get yourself ready to exit this plane of existence. You had better get ready to say goodbye. So, I was walking home after dark one night, something that I knew not to do. I had begun dating a girl from a few towns over, a girl who had never even heard of Dogman. It was such a vacation to be in her presence. I had never gotten to know someone so relaxed. It was so easy for her to laugh. She wasn't serious all the time like the people I grew up with. She made me feel good, which was such a strange way to feel. As I returned home from our date that night, I had become so happy that I forgot I lived in a very dangerous area, and that once I entered my hometown, I was no longer up on top of the food chain. I could hear the thing before I could see it. I realized then that I was being followed. Something was shadowing me in the yard I was walking past. The fence went up way over my head, but I could hear the thing there. I decided to take off running down the block, then make a left turn. I would only be 1 block from the main drag, which was better lit and more heavily populated. Nobody that I knew of had ever seen the Dogman dare to go up onto our main street, so if I could get there, I would probably be safe the rest of the way home. I executed my plan, feeling as though I were a tiny, little mind located in the skull of a big biological robot that I was operating, ordering it to run. I was so scared that I really felt separated into parts like that. I was the brain, and I was begging the body to run. To say I was panicked would be accurate, and I'm sure I was able to run faster than I normally might due to the adrenaline coursing through me. I remember pumping my arms and legs, not looking behind me, not wanting to see the thing that I knew was there. I kept my eyes on the goal of the well-lit street in front of me. As I was halfway there, I saw some people walking. My heart lifted, and I started to believe that I might actually survive this. Turning around to finally see how far I was from my pursuer, I saw the Dogman for the one and only time in my life. I knew what it was, obviously. I hadn't expected it to be so sickening looking, however. It really looked like a boogeyman. It definitely seemed like a monster. It was something out of myth or nightmare or stories. It wasn't something from the forest. Do you know what I mean? Because it was something from the forest, but it wasn't. Seeing it split my brain in two because it looked like special effects that it would take an entire team to pull off. Yet, it was entirely alone. Nobody near it, standing in the middle of the street, regarding me. It had given up its chase of me because of all the lights up ahead, but it still wasn't done studying me. I saw its chest heave in and out as it caught its breath before returning to the darker side of town. The thing had to be taller than Aaron Judge and as muscular as Schwarzenegger, but it was also lopsided, mangy, and muddy. It looked like it had seen quite a few bad fights in its day, and its eyes, which did not glow but did exhibit eye shine, looked more than a little bit insane. As it turned to walk away, I saw that it was spotted on its back. It was largely a dark brownish gray, almost black, but on its back and maybe tail it had lighter colored spots. I want to say that it resembled a pit bull, but with sort of a mane of longer hair on its shoulders and upper back. It had very short fur on its belly, lower back, tail, and extremities. It was bipedal the entire time I saw it, and walked with a sort of macho swagger. I went home upset and started to tell my parents what had happened, but they just flipped out on me. They blamed me for the incident, and it's true that I was careless, but they were just so intolerant and mean toward me that I didn't want to be part of their family any longer. I got my stuff together and moved away about 4 months later. I didn't have the perspective to understand that my upbringing was not normal until I moved out of town and tried to have relationships with people. Not only was I having trouble staying with girlfriends, I was having trouble getting along with anyone. I was just under too much constant stress, and I wasn't even aware that it was almost entirely self-imposed. When you live with Dogman around, you begin to develop a mentality as though you are under siege and it's wartime. When you move away from the Dogman, if that's the only kind of life that you've ever known, you may continue to act like it's wartime. You may continue to act as though you are constantly under attack or at risk of being attacked from any angle at any second. Sometimes you have to remove yourself from a situation before you even notice that the situation exists. But now that I live a more normal life, I can tell you with certainty that Dogman is bad for your health. One more creepy Dogman story coming up right after this. Hey Alicia, did you see that Jim Steranko is appearing at the Northeast Comic-Con?
I did not know that.
Yeah, plus the amazing Kreskin.
Oh my god, that's so like Fast and a Raidering, yo.
Plus, from the 1970s, it's John Davidson.
Gasp.
The guy from Buffy.
Badass.
The cop from Mr. Rogers.
Badasser.
The blue chick from the TV show.
Badasserest.
And of course, it's all hosted by Gary Summers, the king of pop culture.
We hear it for Gary Summoners and stuff.
All this and more, March 13th through 15th.
OMG.
At the Boxborough Regency in Massachusetts.
Yay.
Right next door to my home, Wolf Swamp. Dogman on our rooftop. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a story to tell you that's ongoing as I write it to you. In fact, I'm writing it all down as much to collect my own thoughts as for any other reason. My wife and I have to make a big decision, and most likely our young family will be forced to make some sacrifices and compromises due to the hostile and nagging presence of what seems to be a North American upright walking canid, also known as the Dogman. For the first year we lived in this home, located in a lovely and relatively new suburb that I can't identify in this story, everything was fine. We had chosen the place to raise a family in. We had made friends with the people who would eventually be the teachers and principal of our children years before they would even enter kindergarten. We knew all the other parents in the neighborhood, at least by reputation, and were friendly with as many as we could be. We wanted this home to not only be our shelter each night, but we wanted it to be the perfect launching pad for our offspring. They would get the best schooling from teachers who were not only talented, but personally invested in their growth. They would be surrounded with peers who were themselves the second or third generation of very successful families. They would all grow and achieve great things long after my wife and I were gone. We had put a lot of research, planning, and energy into this. And then, one day, I came home and saw a large figure standing outside one of our ground floor windows. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It didn't look normal, and it didn't look real. I ran toward the figure before I even understood what I was running toward. I was shouting at him to get away from my house and studying him with my eyes at the same time. He appeared to be very muscular and covered in dark fur, but it might have been a costume on a tall kid. His broad shoulders might just be shoulder pads under his costume. It had to be a tall kid in a costume, that was what I was thinking. Then, the figure in question heard me shouting at him, and he turned to look at me. What I saw were not human eyes peering through mask holes. What I saw was not a mask. I saw a living, breathing, biological visage staring back at me with the dark black eyes of an animal. Those eyes were curious. They didn't seem to understand me any better than I understood it. But the most striking thing of all was that it clearly had a dog-shaped head. It even tilted the head to the side to express curiosity, just the same way a dog does it. I must have looked as confused as it looked, but I tried to remain fierce, and I tried to continue running at the same speed toward it. After all, it was staring into my home. The dark, upright creature walked bipedally and casually away from the window toward the woods nearby. I ran up to that window and looked inside. My young family was playing inside the room that the monster was looking into. I got bars to put on the outside of the ground floor windows of the house. I also got thick curtains to prevent anyone looking in. I was hoping that if the creature couldn't see anything inside the house, it would find us boring and leave us alone. I also got fencing put in around the perimeter of our property, which led to an argument with one of our neighbors. They thought we meant it personally against them, but we were only trying to dissuade creatures from the woods from coming to visit us in the night. That was all. A month or two after the bars and fences were installed, our neighbor on the other side took me aside casually to let me know he had seen a figure that sounded exactly like the one I had seen, and he saw it standing on our first floor roof, looking into one of our second-story windows. I asked him to show me which window the creature was looking in, and sure enough, it was the one my kids sleep in. My wife is expecting our third, and our eldest enters kindergarten in September of 2020. We need to decide if we're going to stay here, where we are, or if we're going to move somewhere else and start over. We have not heard any other reports of the Dogman in our area. It's only been seen so far by me and my one neighbor, that's it. So even if we move to another home that's still zoned for the school we want our kids to attend, we won't know if we'll be moving out of the Dogman's turf or not. We really don't know the creature's range. We only know that it's interested in our house. I don't even want the kids playing in the backyard anymore. It just feels so unsafe. In my mind, we need to move. But my wife is so heartbroken at the idea of having to research schools all over again, and having to break the relationships we've built not only with the school's faculty, but with some of the other parents whose kids would have been growing up alongside ours. I say everything happens for a reason, and you've just got to roll with the punches. My wife, on the other hand, values research, study, and slow, careful decision-making. Somehow we're going to have to come together on this, and soon, because my next-door neighbor has reported a Dogman on my rooftop. Hey, it's me, Henry Lee Dogman, here to thank those of you who support all of us here at Scary Stories NYC. It really helps us if you click like, and if you forward our videos or leave cool comments. If you can, it helps us even more when you let us share our 25-episode and growing collection of uncensored, scary Dogman stories with you by becoming a paid subscriber at peterbernard.com. That's right. Join our monthly club and get 25 stories right off the bat, each of them wilder than what we're allowed to tell you on this channel. Then, each Sunday, get another new scary story, usually a Dogman story, but always uncensored and secret, available nowhere else on the planet. Please consider joining us today at peterbernard.com and keep the scary stories coming. Thanks, everyone.
Come back for more scary stories.